My mother-in-law DNA tested my baby behind my back.
That's crazy!
So I had a baby with the man I love. We've been together 3 years and honestly, we've got the most perfect relationship. The baby was planned and we couldn't be more excited. For context, I'm white and my partner is black, and our baby came out very, very light. He's light-skinned, blue eyes, soft hair. Honestly, he's just like me. But the minute my partner's mum came into the hospital room and met our baby, she looked at me like she had a bad smell under her nose. The first thing she said was, "This baby is far too light to be my son's." To be honest, it was so outrageous that we actually both laughed at first. We thought she was joking. We thought it was some weird territorial joke that we just didn't understand, but it wasn't. Because then she started pushing for a DNA test over and over and over. I had just given birth, mind you. And my partner, thank God, my partner stood up for me and he said, "No, we're not getting a DNA test. I don't need a DNA test."
I doubt there's even such a thing as the perfect relationship because we all have our problems. Now, I'm not going to say that the woman in this story actually cheated on her man because I have no way of knowing that. But would I be shocked if she did? Of course not.
Happens every day.
If the baby was just born, him being very light doesn't mean anything. It's not like babies come out of the womb looking like chocolate. At least that's not something I've ever seen. Maybe it was the blue eyes that threw her, even though it's perfectly possible for something like that to happen. Before we move on though, I find it interesting that most guys seem to be trained to not want a DNA test and just accept that they're the father of whichever kid was assigned to them. I get that he might fully trust his partner and all that, but plenty of men have made that mistake in the past and got screwed over for it.
I trust her. And we thought that was it. He had put his foot down. He said no, we wasn't getting a DNA test, period, done. That wasn't it. She went behind our backs without saying a word to us after we had said no to the DNA testing. She went and got a DNA test done between our baby and my partner's dad, so my baby's granddad. And would you believe that woman came storming into my house a few days later, slammed the DNA test down on my table and said she was right. The baby isn't my partner's. There was zero match. My husband instantly started crying. Shaking. He couldn't look at me like he didn't even know me. And I was stunned, speechless. I couldn't even get the words out in that moment to defend myself because I knew that I hadn't been with anybody else. How had she done this?
Even though I think trust is one of the most important things in a relationship, just because you trust someone, it doesn't mean they're not screwing you over. That's just a brutal truth about life. For the grandma to go behind their backs and get a test done is kinda wild though. And I don't even know how accurate that shit would be if you do it with the grandparent. To be fair though, the guy should have just got the test done when his mom started making a thing about it. This whole situation could have been sorted then and there. And if he didn't want to pay for the test, his mom could have paid since she felt so strongly about the whole thing. There's no downside to getting the tests done if everyone's being honest, so I'll never get why people like to make such a big deal about things like this.
By the next day, and with his mum's help, my husband was packing his bags. It was bad enough that he thought I could possibly cheat on him. But thanks to his mum, he actually believed that our baby wasn't his. And I was begging him to do another DNA with us present so that we know she couldn't doctor the results.
This is too much drama for me. And honestly, it feels unnecessary because getting a test done would have been the easiest way to solve this shit.
He wasn't listening. He wasn't listening to anything, and his mum was in his ear the whole time. It was later that night that he came back alone for his last few bits. This was the first time now since we got those results that I had any time alone with him. His mum had been there the whole time, and so I asked him, actually I broke down in front of him and asked him to please just talk to me. Please, let's just talk about this. And he finally agreed. And as we were sat down at the kitchen table talking, as I was trying with everything that I have to convince him that I haven't done this, his dad turned up. And this is where things get very interesting. His dad, the quiet, calm man who always stayed out of the drama, he came and sat down next to both of us, and he said he wants a test too. And then he looked at my partner and said, "But not for the baby. I want a test for me and you."
You know, When I hear stories like this, I find them very hard to believe. But I guess the world's a big place, and crazy shit does happen sometimes.
What? He wasn't questioning the baby, he was questioning his wife. He had seen the same results that we had, zero match between baby and granddad. And he must have thought at some point, what if the baby isn't the problem? What if my wife is the problem? So they did. They took a DNA test for the two of them and we got the results back, and the results were zero match. My partner is not related in any way to the man who raised him, to the man who his mum told him is his dad. This is the same woman who accused me of being unfaithful. The same woman who said he can't be your baby because he doesn't match your father. No shit, Brenda. My baby doesn't match your husband because your husband isn't your son's dad, is he? She tried to expose me and accidentally ended up exposing herself. Karma really is a bitch, isn't she?
That's wild. But I guess you would expect there to be some kind of match if you're testing the child's grandparent. Maybe this is why the grandma was so adamant about her son not being the real father, because she did the same thing to his dad and managed to hide it for all those years.
I can't trust anybody.
It's crazy to me how women can get away with stuff like this. And more often than not, there's nothing a man can really do about it if he's a victim of paternity fraud, which is why you've got to protect yourself at all times. Finding out so late in life that your dad isn't actually your biological father's gotta be rough. I wouldn't be able to help but think about how my mom had lied to my face the whole time when she knew the truth.
So the last time I spoke to you, we had just got the results to tell us that my partner and his dad weren't related in any way. Then we decided to confront my mother-in-law. And I am so excited to tell you this story. So my husband and his dad went full-on family intervention style. And lucky little old me got to be there as well. We waited at her house for her to come home from lunch with her sister. Lunch with her sister is her weekly gossip and complaining sessions. My plan was to be chilled, silent even, demure, you know? Just sit back, sip my water and watch the fireworks fly. That did not happen. When she walked through that front door, all smiles and shopping bags, something in me just snapped. I stood up, slammed the DNA results down on her table, slid them towards her in exactly the same fashion she did to me. And then I just watched the realization and the panic wash over her face.
Man, if I was a fly on the wall in that room, I would have been sipping all the tea.
All hell broke loose at that point. My husband and his dad started shouting over each other, shouting at her at the same time. It was messy, loud, and so emotional. But whilst this was going on, she did not look at the men once. She stood there staring at me the whole time, and I just smirked right back. Finally, once my husband and his dad had stopped shouting and the silence just engulfed us, she slowly turned to look at her husband. And more coldly than I could probably recite, she said, "It was 30 years ago. What do you want me to do about that now?" And then she just left, just walked out. No apology, no shame, no explanation.
This is not how you want to have your whole world blown up. And the way the grandma reacted to this whole thing is the perfect demonstration of women not ever being held accountable for anything. Can you imagine that? Your partner pretty much uprooting everything you thought you knew about your life, and not even having the decency to apologize for it. I'm not saying that her apology would have fixed anything, but still. In any case, this is why men shouldn't be so afraid of getting a test done. Because while this sort of thing isn't super common, it does happen. And it happens more often than society likes to admit to. Which is why France has made private paternity testing illegal, because they fear that it'll break up too many families. How crazy is that?
Audacity of this woman. She tried to expose me, tried to tear me and my baby away from our family. And then when her own mess crawled out from under the floorboards, it's everybody else's fault. But wait, it gets better. Her husband decided to stay. His exact words were, "She's right. It was over 30 years ago. What am I going to do with that now? I shouldn't have taken the test."
There's no way I could stay in a situation like that. But then again, I don't know what kind of emotions I'd be feeling. After 30 years, I think I'd be pretty numb for a minute.
I can't feel anything anymore.
But then the rage would start to build. And there's no way that shit wouldn't end with divorce. Rather than the granddad saying he shouldn't have taken the test, Maybe the lesson should be that men should take the test as early as possible so that something like this would never happen to them. How many men have gone to the grave thinking they fathered children, but in reality, they were cuckolded and their legacy died with them?
And would you believe my partner had pretty much the same response? She's my mum at the end of the day. You only get one mum. We just need to move on. I can't move on. Whilst everybody else is just brushing this scandal under the rug, I'm still standing here being told to smile in the face of the person who tried to sabotage my whole life.
You know what? Despite everything that happened in this story, it's her husband's response that makes this whole thing unbelievable. I just can't imagine that he'd react that way, especially when you take into account how he reacted to the initial paternity test. But I don't know, maybe it is possible that a man would be like this due to the shock. What do you guys think?
A woman who measured the skin tone of my newborn baby whilst hiding a whole secret child of her own this whole time. How can I ever get over that? Now I know what you're thinking. If I choose to stay in this relationship, then I do just need to move on. And I know you're right. You know, as much as I want to, I would never go and track down her ex-lover from 30 years ago. And I would never leave little hints of him everywhere for her to find. And I would never try to convince her that she's going mad. And if I have another son, I would never name him after the biological dad as a constant reminder. Because that would be crazy, right?
The way she ended this leads me to believe that whoever the woman is in this story did find out who her husband's biological father is. I don't know if this is a legit story or not, because you can never tell when you come across stories like this online. But because crazy shit happens all the time, you can't always rule it out. Anyway, guys, let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll catch you on the next one.